We're so excited to have you here. We know that there's folks joining from all over. I was looking at the participant list as you were coming in from the waiting room. So lots of folks from all of the time zones all over the US, because I recognize some of the names. So thank you for joining us. And welcome to today's Out at Work LGBTQ panel. We're very excited to have you all with us here and really excited for this topic and these extremely incredible speakers. On behalf of Paragon One, we're really honored to share this space with you. And as we get settled in, here's just a quick set of reminders for you. Remember to get yourself situated somewhere with good lighting and turn on your camera because visibility is important, right? We want to see you. Be respectful of all of our panelists, so try to remain on mute until the Q&A portion of our session, and then you can unmute yourself to ask your question. And above all else, have fun, and remember to share your thoughts, questions, and affirmations in our Zoom chat today. Now let me introduce our moderator, Raina Nelson. Raina is the Senior Manager of the Workplace Equality Program for the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. That's a mouthful, Raina. Wow. In this role, they engage directly with employers nationwide to identify and improve LGBTQ inclusive policies, practices, and benefits. Before joining HRC Foundation, Raina began their professional career conducting research on gender equity and education in the workplace. Raina graduated from New College of Florida with a bachelor's degree in political science. Hi, Raina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much, Cody. It's really a pleasure to be here on this really exciting webinar event and to be joined by so many amazing professionals. At HRC and the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, we're always excited to support programs and events just like this one because it's so aligned with our mission and our work to support the community. One thing we know to also be true is that it's helpful to just pause and take note of where we are, where we've come from as a community, when we didn't have this space to be together like we do today. So October 11th, which is just in 4 days, but October 11th, 1988 was the first National Coming Out Day. It was the 1-year anniversary of the 1987 National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. Today, we're gathered here to hear stories and experiences of 3 really incredible leaders. So we'll go ahead and get started with their stories, advice, and wisdom with some introductions. So our first panelist is Lauren Gray. Lauren Gray is a senior vice president at Edelman. She brings a law degree and nearly 15 years of experience in strategic communications, crisis management, policy, and social issues to help clients manage complex reputational issues and insulate clients from risk. As part of Edelman's social issues team and LGBTQ+ task force, Lauren has counseled clients across industries such as tech, finance, CPG, retail, and fashion on when and how to effectively engage on issues. Prior to Edelman, Lauren provided crisis communications support to the City of New York and Planned Parenthood Federation of America. She trained survivors of military sexual assault to share their stories with Congress and the media. She led communications for the first lawsuit against former President Trump's now repealed transgender military ban. Her contributions have helped lead to industry recognition, including a Cannes Gold Lion, PR Week Purpose Award, and others. PR Week named Lauren to its 2022 Pride in PR list, featuring 30 leading LGBTQ+ PR professionals. Our next panelist is Antonius Porsche. Antonius Porsche is the General Counsel and Chief Diversity Officer at SoundCloud. In his role as General Counsel, he's responsible for the company's business and legal affairs, public policy strategy, and the management of its global team of experts in content licensing, copyright, data protection, and privacy, and corporate matters. In 2022, Antonius was appointed as SoundCloud's Chief Diversity Officer, leading efforts to ensure the company consistently delivers on an integrated diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. Antonius speaks openly and proudly at a range of events, including for National Bar Association, Out for Undergrad, and Native Son. He has been instrumental in key legal battles in the gay rights movement, including representing the Reverend Gregory Dell during his defrocking church trial for blessing the relationship of two gay men, and on the board of the Service Members Legal Defense Network, fighting Don't Ask, Don't Tell. A Chicago native, he is a graduate of Yale College and Columbia Law School, and also successfully completed an executive management program at Harvard Business School. So our final panelist, last but not least, is Omar Alanis. Omar Alanis is the hiring partner in Reed Smith's Dallas office. Omar's primary practice is representing distressed companies in and out of court workouts and Chapter 11 restructuring. He has appeared in bankruptcy and appellate courts throughout the country, including Texas and United States Supreme Courts. Omar has been recognized in the 2015 through 2022 editions of Chambers USA. He is described as one of the smartest and most experienced bankruptcy lawyers. He is an excellent lawyer, incredibly intellectual and charismatic, and a problem solver who's very practical. Omar's work and experience has garnered national attention. In 2021, he was invited to membership in the American College of Bankruptcy. In 2019, Omar was invited to join the prestigious 60-member National Bankruptcy Conference, whose primary purpose is to advise Congress on bankruptcy law. He received the Sandra Day O'Connor Award for Professional Excellence at a ceremony held in the United States Supreme Court, hosted by Chief Justice John Roberts. He is the former chair of the bankruptcy section of the Texas State Bar. So huge mouthful. These are really amazing bios. So incredible to have all of you here today. And I can't wait to hear more from each of you. So question one, can be for everyone. As I mentioned before, this event was inspired by, National Coming Out Day, which will just be happening in a few days. Would each of you be able to talk about your coming out story and share what it's like being out in your firm or your industry? Lauren, we can start with you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, I want to just start by saying I want to acknowledge that it's not always safe for individuals to come out, and I want to fully support and respect that as an idea. But as Cody just mentioned, if you do feel safe coming out, visibility is very important. And it's important in the workplace to help make others in the community feel safe coming out as well. With regard to my own story, I came out at this point almost 20 years ago, which is going to make me feel very, very old for everyone on camera. But it was a really tough moment. I know sometimes in the community we use the line that it gets better. It was extremely difficult. It was very difficult for my family to accept. It was very tough. I came out sort of in a community right at the border of Ohio and Kentucky to a very, very mixed reception from family and friends, which felt very difficult. It was probably one of the most difficult moments in my life, honestly. But I think to that end, for anyone who's going through a moment like that where it feels very difficult, I just want to say that I hear you and I see you. And the community itself can be an incredible source of support. So even in that area geographically, there was just this incredible group of lesbians that were really there for me, a very diverse group of many different ages and backgrounds, et cetera, that really stepped in and were an incredible support. So I would say no matter where you're located, thinking about what support you might have available in your community, how you can connect with other members of the LGBTQ community can be such an important part of that. I'm really lucky at my firm that we have this incredible environment for LGBTQ community members. So I work at Edelman. It's a global PR firm. We have about 6,000 employees around the world. And when I think about our office culture, I'm really struck by how it's really centered on empathy. Our CEO is incredibly, and the head of our US team as well, is incredibly focused on making sure that we listen to and understand each other. And I think with the recognition that professional services are much stronger when we bring really diverse perspectives to the table, and that can't happen if people don't feel comfortable really being their authentic selves. And it's interesting how some of this has been impacted by COVID as well. So I will say over the past couple of years, we've become a much more Zoom friendly or focused organization. And it's really allowed us to connect in an interesting way as LGBT community members with people across offices, across the US, and even around the world. So I think that time has really strengthened our ability to create some of those relationships and has been absolutely amazing. And one really great thing as well that I just want to throw in, they're also really committed to doing a lot of pro bono work, kind of putting their money where their mouth is on some of these commitments for the community. They're donating this year about $500,000 to invest in research for the transgender community, which has been so underfunded, and partnering with NCLR to do some of that work. So we're really thrilled to be part of that. And I think in looking for places to work, it's really great to find spaces where you see those commitments, you see those actions happening, to cultivate a really safe environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's a really incredible story. Why don't we go ahead to Antonius next?
Sure, thanks. And I agree, Lauren, your story was very inspirational. I'm happy to share that I've been openly Black and openly gay my entire career. And these identities are not just intersectional, they are intertwined and inseparable, really. You know, being Black and openly gay in music and technology is a really unique place to be. And SoundCloud is actually just a terrific, fantastic fit for me and my identity, because SoundCloud, which you may know, is a music streaming service and really a full entertainment company, music entertainment company, is popular with artists and music fans who are, you know, generally speaking, 16 to 24 years old, heavily into, you know, EDM, dance music, and hip hop. And in terms of our audience, over indexes on, you know, Black people, Latinx, and Asian. So it gives me an opportunity to bring my passion for community and equality and opportunity to everything that I do in my role. But, you know, there are some unique struggles along the way that I think are really focused on this sort of intersectionality. You know, as a Black man, I'm always balancing being aggressive and a fierce advocate for my business and my clients without appearing to be angry, right? As a gay man, I sort of have to balance my interest in compromising for a good deal or being compassionate about a person or a situation without appearing to be weak or soft. So there's this constant calibration that happens. And at times it does feel like attacks on me, and I'm sure it's not just me and it's others. And it may be some of you, you know, now or in the future. I'm personally not caught up in fairness, but what I strive to do is to carve a path in my career that makes it easier for those who come behind me, including, I hope, you know, many of you. And I feel very proud that part of, you know, the work that I've done and what I hope my legacy will be is that I've been able to, you know, hire and retain and promote such diverse teams of high functioning, like white, Black, Middle Eastern, Latinx, straight, gay, and bisexual folks. And so at the end of the day, that's, you know, that's what I'm most proud of. And I think that is a result of being out in my career.
Yeah, thank you so much, Antonius. The portion on intersectionality is so key, given the demographics of our community. So really appreciate that. And last but not least, Omar, you know, your coming out story and what it's like being out in your firm.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about coming out is that it's not just a one-time thing, usually in our profession. It's sort of like we're having to come out over and over again in different scenarios. My current firm, I've actually only been here 2 years. This is my third law firm. My first law firm was only 10 people. My second one was 800. This one is 1,700. So it's been interesting, you know, weaving through those three. And, you know, to Lauren, we had the same timeline. So it was 20 years ago for me too. And my very first time, I was very nervous about coming out, and I didn't want to at the beginning. I just wanted to focus on work. And I'll pause on the coming out story to mention, like Antonius, of course, I have the intersectionality of being Hispanic and being gay. But I think a third one, and it's maybe the one that's been driving a lot of what I do and who I am, is my socioeconomic background. I grew up very, very, very poor. had to almost run away from home to go to college. It was a very challenging path for me into a profession, and that's kind of driven a lot of what I've the way I operate even to this day. But so coming into the law firm, I just wanted to be the best and succeed, and that was such a huge driver for me. So at the beginning, I didn't want me being gay to be a distraction to anybody, but after a few months at my first firm, they wanted to have a happy hour mixer for new attorneys, and I also don't ever really hide who I am. So I just have never had that bug in me to lie or hide. So I said, well, I'm just going to go into each partner's office and just tell them individually. 5 of the 6 were great. The one was not so great, and it was not a great experience. Fast forward, by the way, he's now wanting me to connect with him and give him some referrals and work and stuff. But that was back then. I was at that firm for 3 years, and then I moved into another firm. Of course, keep in mind this is Texas, and so there's always that in the back of my head. And I was very nervous coming into. I was like, "Gosh, I have to do this all over again." But by that time, I was already kind of known in the community for some of my work, and so the people I guess already knew. And I didn't. Day one, I came into the firm, and one of the first questions was, "Oh, I saw you just recently got married. How's your, how are you and your husband and all that?" I was like, "Oh, well, that was easy. I didn't have to come out there." And it was always just like from day one, was great. I did have a couple of incidences that if we have time later, we could maybe get into that were not so pleasant. But coming into this firm, Reed Smith, like I said, I've only been here 2 years, and it's just a completely different platform, and we're more global. There's just more global sensitivity. I am now head of our U.S. LGBTQ plus group, PRISM. What I am so proud of with PRISM, among so many things at Reed Smith, is the number of allies we have. We have more allies than I think self-identified, and that's actually I don't even know. Like if you pointed to some random member, I could not even tell you, because we're all sort of like mixed and sort of integrated in our common goals of fighting for LGBTQ plus rights.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I think the next question we want to get into is, you're kind of talking about how you started with coming out in your career. How has your experience of being out changed since the beginning of your career? And I'd love to maybe come back around at the beginning and then start with you, Lauren.
Sure. So I came out I started working about 15 years ago. And I just think the environment has really changed. So I think at that time, it was before there were legal protections from discrimination for the LGBT community in the workplace or in the workplace. And I think there was a lot of fear among people who were mentors of mine about what that might mean. I had sort of a very well-intentioned mentor from outside the community who was really guiding me when I was looking for some of my first jobs. And I was advised to do things like, make sure that I scrub my resume to make sure that it doesn't reference anything that could connect me to the LGBTQ community, or, make sure in the workplace that I don't put photos of my partner or family on my desk, or even if I'm asked questions about the weekend or kind of engaging in office small talk, to think about how to pivot from those questions and talk about something else so that you're not talking about your family. I mean, to me, that's just such a stark contrast. I can hardly even believe that was at sort of the beginning of my career that people were saying things like that, and how incredibly evolved and changed the workplace is in this moment. I cannot even imagine someone saying something like that. Today, I can't imagine that at Edelman, which I think is a very vibrant community in many ways. And I think there's the recognition that doing those things as a professional takes a lot of energy. It's very difficult to do. I know that some theorists, like in the LGBTQ community, like Kenji Yoshino, have called this covering, sort of like trying to, downplay some of these aspects of our identity that we might see as disfavorable in the eyes of others, to do that sort of thing. It's a lot of energy, and it detracts from your ability to do your best work, to be your authentic self, to be able to be free and comfortable in your work environment, and do what you need to do to succeed. So as much as possible, I would encourage you to throw off some of that older advice, which I think does not apply anymore, and maybe didn't even apply 15 years ago, and think about how to create a work environment for yourself where you're able to really thrive, to be yourself, to be able to tap into all of your experiences that make you who you are and give you the perspective that you have, so that you can create teams that reflect our culture and are relevant in our culture.
Yeah, thank you for that context. Thinking of where we were in the very first National Coming Out Day and now coming up on one here in 2022, certainly a lot has changed. Antonius, same question.
Yeah, and again, I start from a place where I've been fortunate to be out my entire career. And so while I'm sure that I've grown and evolved over the course of my career, as really every, successful professional, straight, gay, female, male, non-binary should, I think, my experience has changed because really the world around me is sort of just radically different than it was. Probably a lot like what Lauren has just said. Early in my career, when I searched for jobs, I almost always began by looking for the, sort of the firm's published LGBT non-discrimination statement. Sadly back then, that was a unique signal that this was a company that was accepting. And I mean, today it's unique and maybe downright radical if there's a company or a firm that doesn't have a statement like that, that they don't discriminate against LGBTQ folks. That's just sort of a straight up non-starter as far as I'm concerned. The very first, full-time job I was offered out of college was at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati. And Lauren, when you were talking about the sort of border of Ohio, Kentucky, I'm not sure if that's where you were referencing, but I actually ended up turning down that job because the city of Cincinnati had been recently passing, or at that time had recently passed, a number of anti-LGBTQ laws. And I didn't think I could be happy as a gay man living in that kind of city. So, Procter & Gamble felt sufficiently progressive, but, the city didn't seem like it was ready for me. Years later, I actually had the opposite problem. So I had a job offer in New York City, which is my home, from a major sports league. And, now obviously living in New York City was never going to be a problem as a gay man. Where I got stuck was believing that this sports league was going to be ready to accept someone like me who was fiercely out. They kept sending all the signals that they were ready, but I felt like it was a really big risk that in the end of the day, I wasn't willing to take, mostly because there were no proof points, right? There were no openly gay leaders that they could point to, no employee resource groups that I could speak to or that I could see as a place of comfort and guidance once I arrived. No external outreach to the LGBT community at that time. Sort of, trust us just really wasn't enough for me personally at that time. Today, though, so many companies do have the receipts, right, to match their talk. And I mean, for better or worse, you look at pride parades and the number of companies in there who are speaking to their LGBTQ employees and customers is sort of, pretty overwhelming. I think companies have really leaned into that. And maybe, oddly enough, what I'm hearing more of, especially from younger employees who identify as LGBTQ, and as well younger employees from other historically marginalized groups, is that they actually feel like they're maybe being asked to do too much or burdened with, kind of carrying the company's culture. And not to downplay that as a real issue to tackle, But, let's just also be real, and I'm going to show my age, Lauren. That's really a great problem to have, at least compared to kind of where I started.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a, almost depending on how you look at it, right? So, I work really closely with companies in my profession, and I do often find that there are folks, it's one or two people kind of carrying the load for the company, and they're doing incredible work, but it's also easy to get burnt out. So it's like the intention is there, and as always, it's a matter of funding and investment, that sort of thing. So it's kind of two different problems. Lastly, Omar, how is kind of being out changed over the course of your career? I know you talked about some of your jobs, but love to hear more.
Well, let me pull back a little bit and say what's been interesting to me in my profession is interacting with a broad spectrum of, when people came out, right? And some actually that haven't, I'm talking about our age, right? So I work with very senior attorneys and I work with very junior attorneys. I'm the hiring partner of my office, so I'm always talking to young folks, but it is just a striking contrast into what our, more senior lawyers had to deal with. My last firm, there was a two that I can think of that had their whole life, personal life was separate from their professional life. They were not out at the firm, even being there over 20 years. And that just is mind-boggling to me. And even after, people like me and my generation and those younger than me are showing that it's okay and it's comfortable, and, the earth is not gonna, open up and you're not gonna swallow, right? Like, it's gonna be fine. Even then, there is still a hesitancy. It's so ingrained in that generation that you can't be out, that even when they are out, it's very mild, right? And then you have, folks like me and maybe Lauren and Antonius, where we have, coming out stories, right? We can tell you when we came out and here was what happened. I feel like the new generation, it's not even a thing, right? It's just like, well, a lot of them don't, it's never an issue from day one. I've started to kind of hint in my interviews, because it's very delicate, right? Like, you want people to, if they feel comfortable, everyone has different, comfort levels on coming out. And so I never want to ask a directed question in an interview, but I do, suggest something like, we're very diverse. We care about this. We have these affinity groups. And many times the students will say, oh, well, I'm lesbian. Oh, I'm gay. I'm bisexual. I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. Okay, now I know, because, for someone like, me, that, you can see the diversity. For a lot of folks, you can't. So then, I'm able to now give them a plus factor, right? And that's what I think a lot of the younger folks don't, or, at least in the legal profession, that's a very valuable thing right now, especially with big law firms and major corporations. Identifying that you have that diversity is so helpful. I have a few spots every my summer associate class for second-year law students, and then for the first-year law student, it has to be a diverse person, because we're doing a program with an organization where we partner with them, so it has to be diverse. And so if we have a white male that is excellent and gay but doesn't come out, or I don't know from the resume, then I can't offer that person that job, even though that would have been the perfect person to offer a diverse spot to. So it's just, so takeaway is, there is a broad spectrum, generationally, and of course there are still folks, I'm sure, to this day, that are even on the younger side, that are just from their background, family background, is hard to come out. But it's just I think it's just a different world, and it is improving, and it is getting better, right, Lauren?
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And I appreciate that context and commentary for sure. moving on a little bit, I know you all have done your own kind of speaking up and speaking to the issues of the community. What kind of aha moments or poignant experience come to mind when you think about why you've spoken up about LGBTQ plus issues and, have advocated for human and civil rights, generally? And maybe we can start with Antonius this time, switch it up.
Yeah, sure. So, as a newly minted lawyer, I moved back home to Chicago and was really focused on just, trying to be a good junior lawyer. And I got a call from my mom telling me that our local minister, she attended and we attended together a Black church on the south side of Chicago, a United Methodist church. And she called to say, hey, our minister is gathering a team together to help defend and support a white minister on the north side of Chicago. And I think I saw in the chat someone maybe from Chicago. So in the Boys Town neighborhood, he was a pastor of a church there, Broadway United Methodist Church. And he was going to be put on church trial and potentially defrocked because he had officiated at a what he called a Holy Union service for two men who wanted to profess publicly their lifelong commitment and love. And so my minister, straight Black male, wanting to put together a team to represent, straight white male, helping to really further acceptance and accelerate acceptance of gay people in both our community in Chicago and in the church. And so I did that. And, sort of that call to arms by my mom and those two men really left me realizing that change is something you have to actively create, right? And so as a result of what we did, I actually watched as my mom and my minister took a lot of heat, right, from our community, our church community and our neighbors, effectively for defending, purportedly for defending, homosexuality. But I think if we could be really honest, it was also because, we were Black and we were helping to defend white homosexuals. And I think that what I really realized then is that being an agent of change can be unpopular, it can be inconvenient, and it can be really uncomfortable. But what you really have to do at the end of the day is stay true to your values and also your vision for a better world. And so that was really one aha moment where I realized I didn't have the luxury to just sort of put my head down and be a good junior lawyer, that I needed to be an agent of change just from the beginning.
Wow, yeah, that's really incredible and inspiring. Like you said, yeah, change is something you actively create. And when you're making change, like a lot of times you're going to get folks who are pushing back, but that can't deter you, and sticking to your values is so key. Thank you so much for that. I will pose the question to you, Lauren, as well.
Yeah, so I think early on in my career, I really had the opportunity to think about change at sort of a systemic level, and then also on kind of a one-on-one or individual basis as well. So, certainly in law school, and I'm sure you both can attest to this as well, that you talk a lot about the ability to change things for groups of people, how we can go about making that change at a very broad level. But early on, I also volunteered at Philadelphia's William Way LGBT Community Center. They had a peer counseling program there where we talked to people once a week who were coming out and going through other issues. And I did that for 3 years, and it was a really, really incredible experience. I think it really allowed us to see and understand a wide range of community members and the types of challenges and things that people face, and really some of the trauma that a lot of our community has gone through in different contexts. And it was really through that volunteer experience that I ended up getting a job from Philly into New York, working with survivors of military sexual assault. So the person who hired me knew about that volunteer experience and thought it was very, very important to have someone in that role that really had worked extensively with people who had been victims of trauma and survived that and could talk about that more fully. So I think really having that experience, that pairing of both kind of seeing something happen, this broad change at a big level, and then also seeing that impact in individuals' lives was a really, really key part of making me interested in that. And then I think also in the office, you know, having people come up to you and say, I'm just now coming out, or I'm thinking about coming out and I haven't yet, which has happened honestly all throughout my career. So, you know, even within like the last several years, hearing people say that sort of thing. So I think it's just a reminder. I know we've talked about this several times today, but you know, how important visibility is, having people that you can go to and say, I'm contemplating doing this thing. Can you talk to me about what it's like? What has your experience been with this? You know, what do you think I should expect, et cetera? You know, really being able to be there to listen to each other and have those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding peers and community is so important, especially in the workplace, and finding folks that are safe for you to talk to is so key. And that work does sound really inspiring and rewarding. I'll pose the question to you last but not least, Omar.
Sure. I was thinking about my aha moment. I guess it's in maybe two phases. When I was a younger associate at that second firm, we were handling a really big, huge mega bankruptcy case. It was the largest in the country, a couple $1 billion. I mean, it was a massive case. So we're representing the company that's in bankruptcy, and we're in a conference room. I'm with the board of directors of that company, investment bankers from, at the time, Lehman Brothers, now Barclays. Just a bunch of people. I may be one of the only diverse people in that room. And at a certain point, I guess it was around the time, I'm trying to think, it was even before Obergefell. So it must have been around the Prop 8 time, or even something before. But there was something coming out, you know, in the legal community about LGBTQ plus rights. And one of the board members started saying very derogatory things about the community. And it was interesting. It's like he felt like he was in a safe space to be able to do that. And of course, I'm crouching down, you know, and I have never experienced something like that. And it was just kind of getting worse and worse and worse. And just kind of looking around, nobody's kind of saying anything. And one of those people, New York bankers from Lehman Brothers, piped up and said, "What you're saying is not right. And I think you need to, you know, stop, you know, just shut him down." They had a little bit of back and forth, and he was like, "It's not okay. You can't talk like that, and you need to, you know, find another venue for your views." So I was so thankful for him to, you know, coming, I thought, to my defense. So I emailed him the next day and I said, "I really want to thank you for doing that. Like, nobody else was coming to my defense, and I really thank you for stepping up for me." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know you're gay. I was just saying it because it's the right thing to do." I was like, "Oh gosh." So that's an aha moment. Like, you can actually use your position of power to, you know, affect some change. I mean, definitely change the room. So fast forward, I guess, now in this sort of like this part of this phase of my career, where I feel like, I mean, like I said before, the most of my career, the vast majority of my career to this point has been focused on just getting to a successful place, getting to a place where I'm going to be thought about for my expertise and my work and none of the other distractions. And I feel like maybe not be fully there, but I'm much more there than, of course, I was before. And now I feel like I have the luxury to be able to use that influence and my positions to be a strong advocate for LGBTQ plus lawyers and diverse lawyers in general, and just kind of harking back to that one experience when I was younger, and it really changed, you know, an experience for me personally.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we can maybe move into our next question, and then we'll go from there into student Q&A. And I'll just ask this one, and maybe one or two of you can just say, you know, if you'd like to answer it. So the next question is, you know, we'll kind of switch gears a little bit and talk, directly to all of the, young and aspiring professionals that we have with us today. So, if you can, walk us through a time when you developed a relationship with your first, LGBTQ plus mentor. What did you do to get that mentor, and how did it go for you? And yeah, one or two volunteers would be great.
I can jump in on that. So I actually, when I worked at NCLR, I was really excited to work with their legal director, Shannon Minter, who's a very, very long time respected transgender attorney in the movement, has done incredible things. I had remembered reading something that he had written when I was in law school, so I thought he was famous. I mean, that's how I felt, like this is someone that I've read in school, and this is a famous person, etc. Like to have these conversations. And it was really incredible. It was really incredible, I think, to meet people that, to meet people in person that you tremendously respect their career, et cetera. And I was amazed by how incredibly human Shannon is as an individual, and what a lovely person he is. But I do think that developing those relationships, and finding mentors that you can talk to and talk to them about their professional experiences and how they've thought about things, and how, helping them help you think through your own strategic thinking. And a lot of times they have more experience and can talk about how certain issues have evolved or how thinking has evolved, which I think can really help you as a young person kind of step back and say, oh, this issue has become something totally different than what I realized, or, oh, and understanding where this has come from, I have a much clearer direction of where I can take this. And it's not going there right now, and I can do that. So I think it can be really empowering too, to talk to someone and be able to develop some of that direction. And I would just say as well, and I think this is just such good, important advice as a professional, to maintain and build these relationships. Stay in touch with the people that you've worked with previously. Send them a text when you see something funny that makes you think of them. Give them a call and see how they're doing. I'm actually going to be on a panel that Shannon is moderating at the end of this month. So it's, it's nice to have these relationships where you can rely on each other. You can call each other and get a temperature check on something, no matter where you are, what you're working on, and really create this great relationship where you're able to lean on people's expertise.
Plus one to all of that. I think what I would add, or would like to share, and would feel bad if I didn't share this, is it's important to understand the difference between a mentor and an advocate. A mentor, at least, in my mind and in my experience, is someone who helps you think through kind of current situations and can be a sounding board. And that may be someone who is in your workplace, or it may not be. It could be your supervisor, it probably isn't. But an advocate is, on the other hand, someone who helps to create opportunities for you, right? So someone who is in the rooms where decisions are made, assignments are given, promotions are decided. These people have access and influence over the structure and operation of a business or an organization. And so I think it's really important to cultivate both. For me, mentors and advocates have been important in my career, I guess, in a few ways. They've given me the knowledge and confidence to compete for opportunities. They've helped me understand unforeseen challenges that I faced along the way. And that's something that too often, even on panels like this, we do have a lot of success. And I think that's one reason why we've been invited. But anyone who's had success has also had setbacks. And so you have to anticipate that you will also have setbacks, and resilience from setbacks is really important. And I do think mentors can be helpful working through that. And then lastly, I think helping me to think differently and finding people who can help you think differently will be really important to sort of your long-term success.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. That's so helpful. I think, we'll go ahead and get into our student Q&A, but of course, if you have anything else to add, feel free to do that as well. So, we're gonna go ahead and start hearing from some of our participants today. To our students, as we invite you to ask your questions, please just make sure that your camera is on, you'll get spotlighted, and then just make sure you're unmuted, and that you introduce yourself with your name, your school, your major, and your year, if that's applicable. So first we have Stephen Velke. And yeah, please feel free to let us know who you are and ask your question.
Hi everyone, my name is Steven. My pronouns are they, them. I'm actually staff at Purdue Global. I'm in curriculum. And my question was just basically, it's a comment, something that's coming up a lot, climate. So when it comes to the working climate, for queer-friendly companies, what do you think that they're doing that's providing support and help for queer employees to feel comfortable being queer and openly, coming as themselves at work?
Thank you so much. Yeah, whoever feels, go ahead and jump in.
I'll just say, one thing is, just because it's fresh in my head, what is in June for Pride Month, I was pretty, as I said, I've worked at different law firms, so I've seen what other folks have done for Pride Month, and I was really just impressed with what our group was doing. I mean, you couldn't help but know that Reed Smith is a strong advocate for LGBTQ plus rights, because it was every week was a different blog posting or something. We had various different speakers. We had Lambda Legal come in. I moderated a panel on allyship. We had a Jeopardy game for quizzing on different things. It was really fascinating for me to see. I was like, wow, there's no question, like nobody here should question that this is a safe space. And so I think just that acknowledgement from a company during something like a Pride Month, I think is really helpful. We've sent everyone pride flags to every attorney in the office, and so you would walk around and see the displays on the desks, and then of course we have local affinity, we have local liaisons at all of our offices from our PRISM group, and so then they're tasked to do at least one day, but usually more than one, where it's like, here's a pride cake or cupcakes, and we have a picture with the pride flag. So it's just really cool. It's just really cool to be a part of a firm that is that committed.
I would add, I think companies that are wanting to foster a climate where LGBTQ folks feel comfortable and can bring their whole selves to work, are, as Omar said, you have DRGs, employee resource groups, that get funded, right? You have ally skill workshops, right? So maybe also to a point that everyone is so focused on moving the culture forward that you begin to fail at distinguishing who's just an ally from the person sharing the affinity. I think along those lines, to become better allies, to ensure equity in the workplace, you need to have unconscious bias workshops, right? Because we all come with our baggage. I say this all the time. Just because you're from historically marginalized community doesn't even mean that you get a free pass on your bias, right? It's true in the Black community. I've seen it in the white gay community. So we all have work to do. So fostering and investing in workshops and settings where you can constructively engage in these topics is really important. And then ultimately, you just have to cultivate a pipeline of talent that reflects the diverse, workforce you want.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lauren, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so I was just going to jump in on that as well and say, also ask for data, which I think sometimes can really be a marker. So I think, companies a lot of times do internal surveys to get a sense of what's happening from an experiential perspective. And a lot of times those surveys can be quite candid. So if you're contemplating working at an office and you're in an interview and you're able to ask questions, I think it's worth saying, do you have a DE&I survey? Are you comfortable talking with me a little bit about what the results of that survey are? Where are places that you think as a company you're really excelling, and where are places that you think you're falling down a little bit that you want to commit to get better? And I think really the transparency and the candor and the authenticity during some of those conversations, or lack thereof, I think can be a really good indicator with regard to what attitudes are and what sentiment is at a company.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that data piece is so key. So thank you, Stephen, for your great question, and we'll go to the next one. So yeah, next we have Marie Pierce. She is a career counselor, and so we'll go ahead and let them answer or ask their question.
Hi folks, I'm sorry I cannot turn my camera on just for the sake of where I am right now at work. However, thank you so much for inviting us here. A lot of my question has already been answered from the previous one, but my follow-up to that is, I'm working with students ages typically 17 to 21 or 22, and I'd love if the panelists could, if you had any specific advice for that type of age range, for the folks navigating that initial job search, the first full-time gig that they may ever land in the interview process, and what might you say to somebody just starting out?
I mean, I think this is, sorry, go ahead, Omar.
No, you please, Lauren.
I think this is just kind of general advice, less necessarily LGBTQ community targeted, but I would tell this individual, think about the story that you want to tell in this interview. I know that when I was a young professional, I was very scared of interviews. I felt like the interview context was someplace where I was meant to get tripped up. And I think in growing as a professional, I realized how just absolutely untrue that is, but how many people really think that they're in there and they're going to get asked a question they don't know, and it's going to be sort of like an aha moment, when really that's an opportunity to show this company and the people interviewing you who you are, the type of professional you want to be, what kind of professional story you have, thinking about ways to knit together the experience that you've had to tell a really effective professional story, both what you have done and interests you, even if you're very early on in your career, building off of things that you might have done in academia or, an internship, et cetera, and then trying to outline a runway for how you want to get to where you're going, and incorporating this particular opportunity as a really effective stepping stone as part of your professional story.
I think interviewing is there's sort of an art form to it. And, I've seen, and this is maybe more on the socioeconomic path back what I was, what I referenced earlier, especially in the Hispanic community, I have seen lots of interviews where there are students that are really qualified people that don't interview well. And then you have, the folks that have the means and the resources, parents like me with my kids, they are going to interview spot on because I'm going to put them through a program, right? Like I'm going to, work with them in ways that a lot of folks don't. And so how do we equalize that? And so it's a big passion of mine to help do mock interviews with LGBTQ plus law students and minorities. And so I would encourage you all, any student who wants help with interviews, to reach out to any one of us or someone that and just say, hey, look, I'm interviewing for this job. Can I just take 15, 20 minutes of your time? And can we just do like a mock simulation? Because practice makes perfect. And I think it is so critical to get in the door. You need all the help you can get and leverage your resources. And I think as a point somebody made earlier, like, I think that, within our LGBTQ plus community, there is such strong support and a lot of untapped support. So if you can just, I know it's sometimes maybe, people get a little nervous or a little intimidated by reaching out to an accomplished person, but most of the time for the folks that I've met that are in our community that are accomplished, they want to help the next generation. And so if you reach out to them for help, I'm sure there's going to be a very warm reception.
Again, I would concur with all of that. I guess I'd also offer just some real practical advice. Read Apple News beyond Britney and Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion. Like, read about business, right? I think in this age of remote work, I know this is going to be radical and probably controversial. I think and feel strongly you should still seek out some in-person meetings or in-person opportunities to collaborate. And if that is not feasible or possible, virtual coffees where you go in and you're thoughtful and you're talking about a subject matter that's related to maybe not just your job, but the company, and gives some perspective and shows that you're interested. And then I would just say, never underestimate what you have to offer someone. I remember some years ago when I was a senior exec at Nickelodeon and working in digital. And I'll be honest, I didn't know and understand Snapchat. It certainly was not created for me at the time. But someone who was a junior employee actually created a deck to explain it, which is almost embarrassing to tell this, to tell all of you. But at the end of the day, sharing it with me, helping me understand that technology, which of course was going to continue to evolve and change media and interaction and community and all those things, was really important. And that was a skill that came naturally, an insight that was able to be shared. Yeah, what is that?
I think someone just came off mute by accident.
Oh, okay, yeah. So anyway, just don't underestimate that you have something to offer someone to prove that you are invested in their success and in the company's success.
Yeah, it's such a great point, great note to kind of wrap that question up on. So we have possibly one more question, maybe two. So I'll start with this next one. So we have Benoit or Dukanda. And if you want to go ahead and get yourself on camera and unmute yourself and introduce yourself with your school and major and all of that, please go ahead. We're having a little trouble with your sound, Benoit. Try again. So it's a little quiet, so I could do, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read your question out if that's okay. Awesome, thank you. So Benoit says, I come from a very conservative society in East Africa, and I've worked in spaces where my colleagues have gotten fired for coming out and could neither come out or speak out for them. My question is, how do you strike the balance between standing out and standing up for what you believe in and kind of the internal office politics that can be, a little scary?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm that's a very different circumstance, but so I'm going to just speak generally. The way I have viewed sort of my place as I've kind of, when I think back even before the legal profession, when I was at a restaurant, a new waiter, and I knew that I was the only gay person there. I almost looked at it as an opportunity to educate people that gay people are normal, and that it's not a scary thing. You're not going to catch it. And back then, it almost was like that was the fear, right? Like, oh, I can't be friends with someone gay because they're going to think I'm gay, and that was a big deal. And I can't tell you the amount of time. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but back then, the amount of times people will come up to me and say, you're the first gay person I met. I had so many views about gay people, LGBTQ plus people, and you've dispelled them. Like I'm embarrassed about my prior views. And so I don't usually, like, up to this point, like I think right now I'm at a place where I am waving the pride flag. But before, I wasn't necessarily doing that. I was just being myself, my authentic self. And, I have a boyfriend, I want kids, that it's, that is just who I am. And I think I have been, especially where I am in Texas, I have been in lots of environments where that probably wasn't something that a lot of the folks in that group were used to. But I would like to think that throughout my time with these groups that I have, changed their views and their perceptions. So it's almost like you give them an opportunity to, to change. If you don't, give them that chance, then they're going to stay kind of where they are.
Yeah, certainly. And it's quite a balance to strike for sure. Well, thank you all so much for your insights and your responses. And I know that our participants have really appreciated it. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Cody to close us out at the top of the hour.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. A special thank you to Lauren, Antonius, and Omar for being fantastic panelists and all of your amazing advice. Thank you, Raina, as well, for the beautiful moderation. Everyone who was here listening and contributing, thank you so much. I know we're right at time. Just also want to say that if you're curious to learn more, as they said, reach out to them. Also know that our whole team here at Paragon One is here dedicated to supporting early career professionals and aspiring professionals with remote externships. So check the chat for some of our latest programs and ways that we can support you, and be on the lookout for more Bridges career panels, because we're coming at you with some sustainability, getting started in finance, and female leadership to recognize and celebrate Equal Pay Day coming up at the beginning of November. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a great weekend.